If I know one thing about video games, it's up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. If I know a second thing about video games, it's that they're very hard to make. With game development being an increasingly long and fraught process, and game developers being laid off in their thousands, there are plenty of promising games that get lost along the way. Previously on the channel, we've poured one out for the likes of Scalebound and Star Wars 1313. But despite our being sad about it, games we're excited for continue to get cancelled, and studios we love continue to get closed. Join us now as we take a moment for 7 more great games that, without some major unforeseen intervention, you'll never get to play.
The Sims franchise, having sold 200 million copies, is testament to the enduring appeal of creating people, controlling every aspect of their lives, and then drowning them in a pool. Are we okay? Paradox Interactive, the company behind city-building sim Cities Skylines, understood that appeal all too well when, in 2023, it announced Life by You, a life sim game that aimed to be even more in-depth, even more flexible, and even more customizable than EA's long-running Sims series. Helmed by Sims franchise veteran Rod Humble, Life by You vowed to let you personalise an entire open world for your handcrafted characters who would take part in customisable conversations with dialogue options and real language. None of your nonsense Simlish sul sul and dag dag and skibbity toilet.
That last one's real.
I think so. In Life by You, we were told you'd be able to assume direct control of characters and travel around your beachy suburban neighbourhood in various modes of transportation, like skateboards and cars, as if you were playing GTA Online in a server where no one is strafing you with a fighter jet, i.e. the dream. But the game, originally slated for release in September 2023, was delayed twice to allow additional development time before finally, in June 2024, being cancelled altogether, with Paradox Deputy CEO Matthias Lilja saying, "More time will not get us close enough to a version we would be satisfied with." Which sucks for all these Sims enthusiasts who'd been anticipating taking their life sim experience to the next level. Now we'll never know how long a Life by You character can survive in a swimming pool when you take the steps away. Or what they'd scream in English.
This station was your laboratory, and the experiment was a failure.
As disastrous video game launches go, they don't come much more catastrophic than Redfall. It wasn't so much the poor graphical performance or the numerous bugs that the game shipped with that was the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that Redfall's cooperative vampire hunting live service game concept was met with complete and total apathy from the gaming public. The only less successful launch would have been if they'd accidentally launched it directly into the bin instead of onto shop shelves. The studio behind Redfall, called Arcane Austin, was apparently working on some much delayed DLC for Redfall, which would add 2 new playable heroes, right up until May of this year when Microsoft closed the studio. A bit of DLC for a game that no one was playing? You might be thinking, no great loss, to which I would say, a load of people just lost their jobs, you monster. In addition to that, the closure of Arcane Austin also means we'll now never get to see a sequel to sci-fi immersive sim Prey, which came out back in 2017.
Good morning, Mort. Looks like we have some tests to run through today.
Set on an enormous Art Deco space station that is under attack from a shape-changing race called Typhons, Prey might not have been quite as beloved or critically acclaimed as Arcane Leon's Dishonored, but it was both a true cult classic and the reason we'll never look at a coffee cup the same way again.
It's empty.
When I said I need my coffee to wake me up, I didn't mean like that. With the closure of Arcane Austin, we're unlikely to ever see a sequel to Prey, leaving us wondering if this series in particular is cursed. After all, there was a Prey game in development by a studio called Human Head back in the early 2010s, until that got cancelled by Bethesda, making way for Arcane Austin's rebooted version. Still, there's also guaranteed to be no Redfall 2, so it's not all bad news.
Killian betrayed my team and murdered them. He gunned them down and fled. No clues, no motive. Only a bloody trail for me to follow. That trail has led me to Silver Creek.
Tom Clancy used to be a man. Now he's more of an idea, an emotion. Tom Clancy is whatever you want him to be, and for a while, Ubisoft wanted Tom Clancy to be the little name in front of the Division Heartland. Tom Clancy's The Division Heartland took the established Division formula and remixed it slightly, turning it into a light survival game and transplanting the action to the fictional town of Silver Creek in, you guessed it, America's Heartland. Basically, it looked like The Division, only you had to make sure to drink enough water.
Dehydration can slow you down, so you really have to keep an eye out for fresh, non-contaminated water when you're out in Silver Creek.
I mean, that's just good advice generally. With survival games still plenty popular in 2024, and with the benefit of an existing well-known franchise to piggyback off, what could possibly go wrong?
The teams poured their heart into this game, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Yeah, about that. The gameplay trailer looked like a game far along in development, but after multiple closed beta testing periods and quiet delays, it was finally announced in May of this year that the game had been cancelled in that most cold and dispassionate of ways, via an earnings call. It's the dumped via text of the video games industry. We can't help but wonder exactly how close The Division Heartland was to release when the plug was pulled. This game had polished graphics, a sophisticated feature-rich interface, and seemingly a ton of gameplay mechanics in place. Plus, it was based on a solid foundation laid down by the original Division games. As a downloadable free-to-play game, this is definitely one of those ones where it feels like it would have been almost more work to cancel it than just let it come out.
We can't wait to have you join us in Silver Creek.
Come on, Ubisoft, just release it. You can't contain Tom Clancy. He's like an ocean breeze.
New York City. Nothing in the whole world I wouldn't do for this big, beautiful apple. One moment, you're scarfing down a slice from Vinny's. The next, you're stopping a supervillain prison break.
As Marvel's Spider-Man 2 by Insomniac Games made abundantly clear, the only thing better than one Spider-Man is two Spider-Mans.
This is my power. My responsibility.
Spider-Mans? Spider-Men? Spiders-Man? One of those. Following that logic, a whole 5 Spider-Mans is even better still, and that was basically the premise of SpiderMan The Great Web.
But you're way better off with some friends.
If it had made it to launch, SpiderMan The Great Web would have been a co-op multiplayer game in which 5 multiverse incarnations of Spidey, including Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man 2099, and Scarlet Spider, teamed up against the Sinister Six in an open-world Manhattan.
We've seen the Sinister Six before. Never so methodical.
Judging by the solitary trailer that exists for Insomniac's unreleased multiplayer Spider-Man game, The Great Web would have had all the verve of Spider-Man 1 and 2, plus punchy new Spider-Verse art styles and environments to roam with your friendly neighborhood Spider Gang alongside Peter Parker and Miles Morales. The existence of Spider-Man The Great Web came to light when in December 2023, a group of ransomware hackers targeted Insomniac, stealing data from its servers that included personal information belonging to staff and material on unreleased games. This was a dick move, primarily to the Insomniac employees and contractors whose info was compromised, but also to us, the Spider fans. We learned via this leak that the Great Web was a thing, and also, straight after, that we would never get to play it, because it had been cancelled internally long before the hackers got hold of it.
You in?
So long, Spider-Mans, Spiders-Men. No, it's definitely not that one.
What do video game developer Capcom and mythical monocular creature the Cyclops have in common? They both struggled with the concept of the third dimension. While Capcom absolutely dominated the 2D fighting genre in the early 90s with Street Fighter II, seemingly every time it attempted a 3D fighting game to compete with the new PlayStation and Saturn titles Tekken and Virtua Fighter, it ended up being a bit of a disaster. Capcom's attempts to create full 3D versions of Street Fighter, named Street Fighter EX and EX2, were farmed out to a developer called Arica, and had they not been the immediate follow-up to one of the greatest 2D fighting games of all time in Street Fighter II, they'd probably have seemed perfectly acceptable. Let's say nearly acceptable. I'd forgotten about that weird spandex skeleton. As it was, the EX series paled in comparison to the older, fast-moving 2D stuff like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. By the time Street Fighter EX3 came out on PS2 in the year 2000, Capcom had all but admitted defeat, and Arika's final work-for-hire Street Fighter game was basically a 2D fighter with 3D graphics.
Tiger Shot!
But riding high on the success of Capcom vs SNK 2 in 2001, Capcom thought they would give that pesky third dimension another try, and started drawing up plans for another true 3D fighter, named Capcom Fighting All-Stars. On paper, this game sounded brilliant, mainly because of a stellar roster of characters. A bit like successful crossover titles Capcom vs SNK 2 and Marvel vs Capcom 2, it would bring in fighters from multiple different franchises, including Street Fighter, Final Fight, Darkstalkers and Rival Schools. There was even going to be a secret character borrowed from Capcom's frenemies at SNK. In fact, the only missing character was the kitchen sink. No, that metaphor doesn't work at all. The other thing that didn't work at all was Capcom Fighting All-Stars, apparently. The game had a series of location tests in Japanese arcades which returned lukewarm feedback from fighting game players. Instead of taking the time to balance and refine the game to the point where it might have seen release and delivered on that incredible potential, it was instead summarily cancelled. Once again, Capcom had been foiled by that tricky third dimension. Still, it could be worse, Capcom. The Cyclops got poked in the eye by Odysseus with a burning stake. And that hasn't happened to you. Yet.
Yep, that's me. And you're probably wondering how I ended up here. Well, it's pretty standard. Check this out.
In January 2023, HiFi Rush came out of nowhere, being announced and released on the very same day.
So, not only were we super psyched for you to play this, we're happy to tell you that you can play HiFi Rush tonight.
It was a move as bold and self-assured as the game itself, which turned out to be a superlative rhythm action hack and slasher with a better taste in music than your vinyl collecting ex.
Still call it a comeback.
Even more surprising than the game's sudden arrival was its provenance. Having sprung from the minds of the developers at Tango Gameworks, the studio founded by survival horror legend Shinji Mikami, and that prior to HiFi Rush was best known for gnarly horror series The Evil Within. So, a bit different. HiFi Rush was a bona fide hit, embraced by critics and gamers alike, and buoyed up by that instant success, Tango Gameworks reportedly set their sights on a sequel. They were in the process of pitching HiFi Rush 2 when in May 2024, Microsoft, the owner of Tango's parent company ZeniMax Media, closed down the studio, in a move as surprising as the launch of HiFi Rush 1, but not nearly as enjoyable. So it was that Microsoft Gaming shuttered the first Japanese studio in its portfolio for vaguely explained cost-cutting reasons, and HiFi Rush 2 went from a soft yes to a hard no.
You're going out with the trash.
Now where am I supposed to listen to 9 Inch Nails? On some kind of music player? It's not the same.
She's gone.
Speaking of HiFi Rush, here's some more HiFi Rush. The exuberant rhythm action game from Tango Gameworks was host to a number of Easter eggs alluding to Tango's survival horror series The Evil Within. HiFi Rush's goth stablemate was referenced here with an out-of-place mirror portal that leads apparently to an Evil Within save room that I'd stay away from if I were you. It also featured 2 robots by the name of Seb Ah and JSF-001, who bore an uncanny resemblance to Sebastian and Joseph from The Evil Within, right down to the moody dialogue.
Another day, another mess that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, that's them alright. Most tantalizingly of all, for Evil Within fans, a news ticker in a HiFi Rush cinematic appeared to tease the much-anticipated Evil Within 3, saying sequel to popular survival horror franchise announced. 2 things on that. 1, a sequel to 2017's freakily excellent Evil Within 2 would go down real smooth. And 2, what kind of blissful utopia is HiFi Rush living in, where you get survival horror sequel updates on the mainstream news? I'm being told it's a corporate dystopia? I don't know, seems pretty sweet to me. Regardless, whether or not that was a genuine Evil Within tease or just a bit of fun, I refer you to the previous item in this list. If hopes of HiFi Rush 2 from Tango Gameworks have been dashed by Microsoft shutting down the studio, then you can consider hopes of Evil Within 3 doubly dashed. Maybe I should go through the creepy mirror after all.
Thank you so much for watching this video about games that you'll never get to play. If you found this interesting and would like to see some more games that you will never get to play, we've got another video up here about a bunch of other stuff that was cancelled heartbreakingly. And down here, we've got a video from Outside Extra that is full of Star Wars games you'll never get to play. There's enough Star Wars games to fill a whole video. So go check that out as well. And if you enjoyed this, please do check out our Patreon at patreon.com/oxclub. Come and hang out on the Discord. See you there.